WhiskyJason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of an American living in Germany tasting rare and exotic whiskeys. And this may be one of the first whiskeys from D.W.D that you've ever seen a video about. D.W.D Heritage Edition, founded October 17th, 2017. And this builds on the tradition of the Jones Road Distillery, founded by John Brannock in 1872. Now, John Brannock actually learned to become a master distiller by George Rowe. Over 20 years he worked together with him. His uncle was John Powers. These are the masterminds of Irish distilling in the 1900s. And he decided with enough funding to actually start his own distillery using the most modern technology available for him at the time of 1872. So his mission was to make the finest whiskey in the world. Now, in 1887, there was a man named Albert Bernard, and he wrote the book about one of the six greatest Dublin distilleries, and of course D.W.D Dublin Whiskey Distilleries was among them. And also Spencer Blanket wrote a book about the industry in Dublin. I have to correct myself. It was one of the six greatest distilleries in the UK, in the United Kingdom, not just in Ireland. And that's why there's always three that were named in Ireland. That was as I mentioned, the George Rowe Distillery, the Jameson Distillery, and also here the D.W.D Distillery. Now all three of them, use pot stills, contrary to the Scottish whiskey, which at that time started using a column still to make grain whiskey and adding a portion of malt whiskey. And they started conquering the world after World War II, basically, with their Scotch blended whiskeys. Only in the 1980s, up in the 1990s, did we start having single malt whiskey all over the place. Glenfiddich was one of the first ones that did it at all. That's a story all for itself. And what we have here is a blend. 3 years it took. 117 different blends were tried until they finally decided on this combination of 5 to 10-year-old whiskey, double and triple distilled from 3 different distilleries, mostly aged in ex-bourbon casks. So, and this is a excellent, beautiful, fantastic nosing whiskey. I get a floral moment. I get like a sugar cookie moment. I get a lot of the citrus fruits with tropical fruits. I'm talking about papaya. I'm talking about guava and so on. Very, very, very nice nose. Fabulous. Now, while researching for this video, I did find out some interesting facts. The first fact that I thought was very interesting, John Brannock, 1872, had a big problem. A distillery had burnt down in the Liberties. That's the like a suburb back then of Ireland, of Dublin. Dublin had a wall, and right outside the wall there was liberty, freedom to do whatever you wanted to, basically, because the British didn't really care. And one of these distilleries actually, the pot still exploded, burnt, and a lot of this liquid was released into the streets. And some of the eyewitnesses back then talked about a liquid lava because of the burning of the mash and of the whiskey actually going through the streets. And so fire was always a big problem. And so John Brannock actually installed a tank above his distillery with 4,500 liters, that's not right, 4,500 tons of water, so that at any time there was a fire, you would be able to release all the water, wash out all that spirit and dilute it, and therefore put out the fire. So I didn't know about that. That was a very, very interesting fact. The second fact that I did not know was that in 1926, the Irish government declared that whiskey in Ireland can only be 5 years old, not the standard 3-year-old. They also declared sometime around that point that whiskey in Ireland had to have a ABV of 43%. Now, Scotland did something else, and that's why in the year 1960, Ireland changed their rules, and they went back to a 3-year-old minimum aging, as well as only a 40% ABV. So if you take a look at the history of Irish whiskey, basically everything you could do wrong they did, politically, as well as economically, as well as socially, as well as tax laws. This would be like a case study in how not to help an industry survive versus a new competitor with new technology, which I was talking about with the grain whiskey and the column stills. All right, so 2017, on October 17th, the newly founded D.W.D presented this whiskey to the public, and it's called Heritage Edition. Of course, it wants to go back to the heritage of John Brannock in 1872. And this distillery actually was closed 70 years prior to the date of the opening. So it was closed in 1947. Also on 17th of October. This is a fantastic nose. I really cannot emphasize how much I love this nose. Well job on selecting the whiskeys for that. Oh. Now, the spirit itself does not live up to my expectations. First of all, it's fairly weak. You could also say light. The first thing I get is a nice little floral moment, a little bit of the malt, and then those tropical citrus fruits kick in, but then that finish. It's very, very peppery. It's somewhat hot for 40%, somewhat young. There's a lot of grain in here as well. And what I really, really dislike is that wood, that old, almost rotten wood of old barrels that have been used 3, 4, 5, I don't know. That was German. Maybe even 20 times for all I know. The fruitiness and the pepperiness masks a lot of it, but it still comes through a little bit. If I was to give a grade for the nose, I would give it a solid A. I really, really love this nose. If I would give just the grade for the first initial 20 or 15 seconds in my mouth, I would actually give it a B. But that finish is more of a C minus. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a grade of C plus. Now this is 50 euros over here, only available at the Celtic Whiskey Shop in Dublin. Also online you can buy things. In the States I think it's going for $40, which makes no sense because it should be, which would be about 35 euros, but who knows. If they only picked because of the nose, great job. You have to taste it as well. And that finish is, I'm so sorry. All right, WhiskyJason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of an American in Germany. Value for money, 50 euros. I'm going to give it actually like a D plus. If you can get it for $40, I'm going to give it a C minus. Depends on where you are. Way too expensive for the new no-age distilling of a no-name bottler. They don't even have their own distillery. On their website, they say one day we might. I'm not sure if they use the might there. They are planning to have a distillery once again in the North Shores of whatever. So we'll see what happens there. All right, videos come out on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe, please like, and please leave a comment. My question of the day is, what do you think about resurrecting old brands? D.W.D was an old brand. They resurrected it now with a totally new company that has basically nothing to do with the ancestors. Is that a good idea or is it a bad idea? What is your personal opinion? I personally would say, no. You're basically trying to stand on the shoulders of giants you have no connection with, and so I'm not a great fan of it. Make up your own story, your own backstory. But that's the problem. Backstories sell whiskey. All right, thank you very much. That's my question. What do you think of companies that actually take old brands? Michter's is a good example as well, and then reuse them for the new stuff. James E. Pepper is a new one, 1776, the same thing. There's basically no connection with the original, but yet they're using it today. All right, what's your opinion? Thank you very much. See you soon. Bye-bye.